Yes, okay. Thank you, Michael. Sorry.
Terrific. So let's begin this discussion. Because we all are feeling a little bit uneasy, uncomfortable, I hope this analogy makes sense to you as it does to me, in terms of feeling lost in this huge storm. But where we want to get to, and my vision of where we get to, is not the storm and not a small boat, but we want to build this beautiful yacht and we want to sail on this lovely ocean together. So this is my conception of going from a rickety boat that has the potential to be overwhelmed by the storm, but we get through it and we build something even better. So you can come up with your own analogy, whatever makes you happy. This boat analogy makes me very happy. It's a New England tradition because we live right on the ocean, and we have traditions of great literature about the ocean, like Herman Melville's Moby Dick, which doesn't end so well, but I hope we can end much better than that. Here are the three expectations for our, all right, I need to let a few more people in. Thank you for being patient as we welcome new participants. 3 more, okay. We are almost at full capacity. If we have one more person join us, we will have 100% participation. And I was waiting for Hanan to be with us because
Hi, Michael.
This wouldn't be the same. This wouldn't be the same without you.
Thank you, Michael. How are you? It's good to see you all. I'm so sorry I sent you an email because I had a problem signing in, but thank God it works out.
You're with us now, so that's what matters.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Hello, Professor Wadi. All right, we have one more person to admit, and that will take us up to 26 out of the 27. This is terrific. I'm very appreciative of everyone who's been patient. Okay. Great. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, and I might have to interrupt one more time if we have another participant coming in. So, we really have a fairly simple agenda for today. We're going to address 3 aspects of our current situation and talk through the ways in which you collectively might strategize about the future, immediate and long-term, with regard to how we engage learning and teaching. So I think one of the first most constructive ways for us to begin is to think about what is the current situation. Let's look at the landscape and let's use our own experience as well as the feedback that we've received from our students to understand what is the current learning environment in this challenging moment. But we're going to focus not only on the challenges and the negative aspects, but let's look at the opportunities and the advantages. So that'll be our first discussion. Then we'll move into a discussion with regard to, as we understand the landscape, the challenges and the opportunities in our learning environment, what might help us to think through strategically to solve some problems. And I think what better way to do that in terms of learning and teaching design and theory is to engage some of the research-based literature. 2 pieces that I shared with you prior to our session today. So we're going to talk a little bit about those resources, and of course there are many other resources, but we'll begin with these resources. And then I think, having understood the landscape, identified some of the challenges and opportunities, then I think we're ready to begin at least constructing the foundations of what might, I think, and I suggest, should be a strategic plan going forward in the short and long term with regard to our teaching and learning. Right? So in order for everyone to feel comfortable and participative in this session, I know you all have used a variety of conference features and project products and programs. Zoom is something that I have found to be really applicable and adaptable to a learning environment. I'm not a Zoom promoter. I don't, I'm not selling this to you, but it is in my experience over the last couple of years, using other products as well, that Zoom, for me at least, is a great product. So we're going to test out some of those features of Zoom that would allow us to think about how we can engage and create a learning and teaching environment in the remote phase of things. Okay. We also, in addition to the Zoom, which we'll engage in just 1 minute, I created a shared Google Doc that I emailed to all of you. Many of you hopefully have access to that. If you don't have immediate access, you can go to the chats function of our Zoom meeting, and I've provided the URL for that. You can click on the URL, and that'll take you to the shared Google Doc. So a shared Google Doc, right, all of us can see it. And we can actually, in real time, provide notes and ideas and suggestions. I'm suggesting that we use the Google Doc as a record of our thoughts and our responses to the questions that I provided you before this session. And we're going to go through each of those questions today, and I'm going to ask you to provide notes on that shared Google Doc. And then, we have that as our record. And then I'm using another Google feature that I encourage often in use, not necessarily this particular feature, but to do an assessment of where we are in each phase of our learning process. So for this session, we'll have an exit survey, an evaluation of the session, which will help us to design better seminars and sessions in the future. Okay, so let's go into the first discussion. We'll facilitate each of the 3 discussions this afternoon in a small group discussion. So I'm going to place you in random. So Zoom does allow for a predetermined set of discussion groups, and I could put particular people in groups, but we're going to use the random feature so that there is no bias on anyone's part in terms of who it is that you end up having a discussion with. But we'll have 3 iterations of discussions this afternoon, so you'll be in 3 different groups. I'm going to place you in groups of, I think, 4 or 5. And what I'd like you to do during the 5 to 10 minutes, 10 minutes maximum, which means you've got to do some concentrated work in your breakout groups, I'd like you to discuss this question first, all right, which has 2 parts. What are the most significant challenges, and what are the opportunities that you see having observed and engaged in yourself in this new learning environment? So what are the challenges, and what do you see as the opportunities? And I would suggest that at least one person in each breakout group is designated as sort of the scribe, so that you can type into the shared Google Doc some of your ideas and thoughts. All right. Is everyone comfortable and excited about that? Okay, I'm seeing everyone is really excited about that. Fantastic. All right, thank you. Okay, so I will, so we've got some people know how to use the reactions here. That's great. All right. So I'm going to create these breakout rooms, and then I'll bring you back together in 10 minutes. The question for this first breakout is also written on the shared Google Doc, right? Think about and talk with one another about your experience and what you're hearing more broadly. What are the challenges and what are the opportunities in the current learning environment? All right, I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, so there you go. Great. So follow, for those of you who are not in your rooms yet, you need to follow the prompt on the screen to enter your group. This is also another way for you to know if students have just signed into the session but are not actually participating, because you have to actively enter the breakout rooms.
Everybody
Right.
is back, I guess.
Everyone is back.
Yeah.
Terrific. All right, wonderful. Did that feel like 2 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes? It was 10 minutes.
9.5 minutes.
Okay.
That was a little bit short.
It felt short. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little more time for the third discussion, right? And then we'll have an opportunity to come back together and think through some next step opportunities and what would be most effective for us to go forward. One of the opportunities that I've had to think about the resources in terms of how it is that I re-ground myself in understanding the learning process is I've had to go back and do more learning myself. And this has been, I think, one of the advantages of this challenging moment is that I've had to have conversations with my colleagues in ways that we normally don't do every day, thinking about how it is that in each of our classes we're having challenges. How can we help each other to think about how to navigate that? How do we collectively bring resources together that we have individually found really helpful? We also have had a terrific, and this is an important part, that our university has provided us with significant resources, both in training and in new technology designs, and in a variety of new faculty discussions that we're doing. I'm on Zoom about 8 hours a day in various faculty discussions with my program, my department, with the faculty of the School of Education, and with faculty, the 700 faculty across my university. So this has been, I think, good. You know, we've had to create relationships professionally that require immediate sorts of responses. And my colleagues have been, as you have found, I'm sure, have been incredibly supportive. And so it's been a real joy to be part of a wonderful, dynamic, really talented academic community. And it's no less for you. So if we think through, you know, I'm not going to go through each of these steps that Chickering suggests are fundamental to the effective learning process. But as you think about this after this seminar and as we move ahead, I've been looking at each of these 7 components through the lens of how am I doing this in the current situation? How am I doing this in the ways that I communicate with my classes individually with students as well as collectively as we come together? How do I think about or accomplish these learning techniques and outcomes by the approaches that I'm taking to asking students to engage in material, perhaps in new modes, right? And each of these components, you know, it's not so much about how we encourage or compel or persuade students to be different or to learn differently. Most of these 7 components are about us. How is it that we can be more effective? And in my case, I have to admit, I have to change my own thinking. I have to be attentive to ways of learning and the way that I engage students in different ways. So the onus of responsibility as I see these 7 learning outcomes and techniques are on the way that I see myself as a teacher. And I hope that I am becoming a better teacher and that this will be something that has long-lasting effects and that my students will benefit from. the discussion about learning processes and effectiveness, sometimes right now discussions are in this binary mode of, is it synchronous or asynchronous learning? And that's not, I agree with this technology author, Phil Hill. It's not about whether we do asynchronous or synchronous, right? It's not about the quality of our video conferencing. It's about what are the best techniques for us in our particular disciplines with the outcomes in our own learning and content, and our understanding about how students engage the material and become competent learners and develop the skills that we're trying to provide them. What are the best techniques to do that? So there isn't just one way. So I would encourage us not to get stuck in this like synchronous or asynchronous. It's both, all right? It's both and it's all, but it's used in a way that is balanced and that is appropriate for our methodology, our content, our disciplines, and the outcomes and skills that we're trying to provide students in this environment. But this leads us to a really important question. If we understand the landscape with the challenges and the opportunities, if we're more engaged or seeking out a greater engagement with one another about the learning process and giving each other advice, learning from those of us that have particular skills in certain methods of teaching that we can benefit from, those of us that have resources to consider, like learning design and learning science knowledge through some of the current literature. Then we come up against, well, all right, now I know what I need to do. Now I know how I need to improve. Now I understand the learning process better, but I do need help. I do need resources, and resources come in a variety of ways. So I'd like you to think about in this third and final discussion for this seminar, to think together about what are the resources that you need to develop high impact teaching and learning. And think about it in the immediate, what do you need now? And then how do we need to scaffold, how do we need to build resources in the long term as we move ahead? Okay? So again, I'm gonna give you 11 minutes this time to think through this question. What resources do you need to develop high impact teaching? All right, so back to your breakout rooms, and we'll see you in 11 minutes. Okay. I think we almost have everyone. No, we're still waiting. A few more. Okay, looks like we're all together. Terrific. So that was 11 minutes. I know I popped into a couple of rooms. One of the other features of the breakout rooms on Zoom is that the instructor, and only the instructor who has control of the Zoom session, can pop him or herself into the various breakout rooms to be available to consult with students as they're having a discussion, not to sort of peek in on them, but to participate, and also to add some advice or suggest that students get back on track, or whatever you need to do. So I can go through, I had 7 breakout rooms, and I could pop into each of the 7 breakout rooms and add something, and then move in and out of those breakout rooms. The other feature of breakout rooms that is nice is that if you have, and I've had this happen to me, is that students will log into the Zoom session, and they will not, you won't see their video, so you don't know that they're actually there. And when you put everyone into a breakout room, if someone isn't really participating in the session, because you have to actively like put yourself into the breakout room. So people that remained in the main session, there were a couple people here today. I'm not going to name them, but they logged into the Zoom session, but they haven't been participating. So I know that, and I know who they are. All right. So that's one way to sort of take attendance, so to speak, and to know who's engaged.
But by the way, some of us were engaged in two sessions simultaneously, like myself.
Yes, sure. And they're, and that's something that you can't manage. So students could be doing multiple tasks at the same time.
Yeah.
Some of you need to do that. I understand. So I'm not criticizing anyone that's participating today, because this is time spent out of your own time. I know this is a real sacrifice.
What I'm saying is that technically, if you can have two screens and each one is with a different chat room, as I had. You engaged me today in two discussion groups simultaneously, because I joined through two screens.
Oh, okay. So you should be doubly knowledgeable now.
Yeah.
We expect a lot out of you, Professor.
Yes, I think because you use the Zoom session through your laptop and through your mobile, I guess.
I use my desktop and my mobile, so I had
Okay. So another feature with multiple screens is that something I'm not using today is that there is a whiteboard feature. So I could activate the whiteboard, and I could type in notes. I can do, with a stylist, I can draw photos and pictures. I could do graphs. I can't, so that's also, but it's essentially the whiteboard feature is essentially in this particular Zoom tool, it's a separate breakout room. So I could have another screen myself using the stylus on the whiteboard, and I could do a discussion, or I could actually be sort of at that whiteboard, right? So that's another really, I think, good feature of this. So we have exactly 5 minutes before I promised that our session would end today. So let's think about a couple of things, and I'm going to share my screen one more and last time. Okay, I heard some great discussions, right? We all need a lot of things, but thinking with regard to how we prioritize the resources that we need in the short term and the long term. So this is a first attempt at this kind of discussion to collect what it is that we all need. Because you are the faculty leaders on campus, this is important for you to articulate what your needs are, and then also be attentive to the needs of those faculty who report to you and under which you direct those departments. It's also an important exercise for the leadership of the university to have a set of responses from all of you, so that no one's guessing about what are the needs, okay? Now, this is not to promise that all the resources you're requesting will immediately be accessible, but there needs to be a process by which good administrative and collective faculty decision-making allows for a strategy moving ahead to access resources, right? I'm going to suggest one resource is that you continue to look for good learning science literature. This particular book I have found to be one of the best ever written. It's a very short book. I'm going to pull it off my desk here. It's not a huge book, but I have found that both the very concrete suggestions that are based on good learning research have been infinitely helpful to me as I'm designing my online teaching. This is a great resource, and it's not very expensive either. So looking for those kinds of resources, and I'm happy to be available, post this seminar to provide more resources. I'll put together some of my own notes from the seminar and distribute them to you with regard to including some of these suggested resources.
Well,
Right.
Dr. Michael, thank you very much. That's really great. But one thing, if you can help, do you have any idea how much does it cost to subscribe to Zoom for like this full version of Zoom as a not-for-profit educational institution?
Yeah, so I think that's something you and I can talk about offline,
Sure.
President, because that's an important question, is as you're prioritizing and you look at all the needs that are being articulated, there are price tags to this, you know, so
Sure.
that will have an impact on what it is that can or cannot be done.
Of course.
I can tell you that the technology on Zoom that I'm using today, that has a lot more features than even I accessed or that you experienced, this is a professional license. So I have an individual license that my university purchased for me. And in this challenging moment, when we were asked to transition all of our courses in 1 week to online instruction, the university decided that they would buy a university institutional license for all of the faculty. And then they realized that students, in order to have security and access to the same product, that students needed to have individual licenses. So the university purchased faculty licenses and student licenses for Zoom at I'm sure a considerable cost. I don't know what that cost is, but you and I can talk about some of those features.
That will be really important.
Yeah.
In order to know how to plan, that's the whole idea.
Exactly. So these are practical questions that we need to think through, but we can't get to those practical questions until we've prioritized what we know we need. And so today's session was primarily how do we collect our ideas about what's happening, what our experience is, how we think students are engaging, what are the advantages and challenges, how do we solve those challenges, how do we tell, how do we collectively as a university with our various responsibilities, including administrators, deans, chairs of departments, and administrators, how do we come together to create that yacht that is my vision for how we navigate the waters going ahead.
This is the original picture that you have put the photo, yeah.
Yes, exactly. The yacht is sort of my fantasy of how we go. So the discussion is going to continue, right? These issues are not going to go away. A colleague who does consulting for educational institutions around technology has suggested that as we advance over the next couple of months, 6 months, year, 2 years, he sees that the challenges that we're experiencing today will to some degree continue, right? So I offer you these kind of four phases of what my colleague Phil Hill suggests we're going to experience over the course of the next 2 years, right? So we've had to go to this really quick remote teaching. We're trying to get back to some normal strategy. Maybe it means we're coming back to campuses. Maybe it means partially coming back. Maybe it means we have to spend another semester online. Who knows? Those decisions are still to be made. But it means that we have to meet those requirements and those realities with the appropriate resources, right? So that we can continue to engage students and that students will be satisfied and that we're doing our jobs as well as we can. But we also, I think this phase 3, you know, we're looking through August and December. So many institutions are still, you know, we're under the control of the governor of the state of Massachusetts. Whenever the governor says the housing, you know, ban is lifted, we're under curfew, you know, we can't do anything. So, and we know that they're making those decisions based on good health science. But then we need to think, we need to be more generous in our thinking. We, as in all of us here today, what does it look like over the next year? What does it look like over the next 2 years? How do we prepare ourselves for the next disruption in what we think is a normal educational process? We're the leaders of that. We're the thought thinkers. We are the, you know, we're the innovators. And we don't need to do it alone, right? So I think the sense of being a community of scholars, of being an AUM community, that we can identify what the needs are, prioritize them, look for resources, put together a strategy and be, I think, even better. I think even better than we were or have been. So that's my sort of prognosis. What I suggest in terms of next steps is let's all review the shared Google document. If anyone has challenges, problems accessing that, let me know. I can, again, invite you to that Google document, and we can continue to add notes and ideas to that shared Google document. Parts of this session today have been recorded. Majdi has been helping me to remind myself to keep the recording on. So this might be something that's, you know, available. I will make this PowerPoint available to everyone. A really important next step for you is I've invited you to complete a survey online. And if you would do that, I'd like 100% participation in completing the survey. This will help not only me to, you know how I can do this kind of session better, but how it is if and when we do similar sessions into the future, what would be important for us to do with this kind of time. Again, your time is precious. You are heroes. You are champions. You really are extraordinary people in what you've done in the last 2 months for AUM and for your students. This, we can't congratulate one another enough. This is really extraordinary work. Particularly AUM has a sense of community. This is why I feel part of you and want to continue to be of support to you, but we can improve, right? And let's try to do that together. So until the next time I'm with you physically at the university, I want to again congratulate you all on your good work. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this discussion. And I look forward to our next and continuing discussions.
Thank you.
Any last words, Mr. President? And then we are done. We're past our time. So no long speeches.
Thank you very much. I thank you very much for having this great seminar, and we hope for more and more of such seminars. It's very enriching. It has broadened our horizons, and it will help us in assessing students in a more fair and transparent ways and methods. Thank you.
Terrific. I look forward to being with you all again. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you, Michael.
Evening.
Thank you, Michael.
So good to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very
Ciao.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you so
Bye. Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
Hope we do this
Thank you.
again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.